Eva. So, welcome everyone. Nice to see you all. So Facha out of Ula. And so welcome to Haley. And so I'm Bernadette Campbell and I'm your Benataya tonight. And so we have some beautiful guests that are here and I think it'll be a really nice evening. For a change on the weekend here in Cape Breton, we don't have, in Nova Scotia, we don't have a storm. So we're very grateful for that. It was a beautiful day. And we're happy to have you here at the Gaelic. So to begin, I want to, I'd like to acknowledge that we're speaking to you from the unceded and ancestral territory of the Mi'kmaq people. And it's because of the peace and friendship treaties in the 1700s, our ancestors, the Gaels, were able to settle here between 1773 and 1840. So tonight, here at Haley, we're having a Cayley, we're having a gathering. And the purpose of that is for us to create a really welcoming space for all of us to converse, to chat, to tell stories, to speak Gaelic, to listen to some songs, and to connect with one another and to find moments that are meaningful for each other. And so with Haley, we're part of the Gaelic Narrative Project, which is a larger organization that we're part of, which is How We Thrive. And so what we want to do is thicken stories tonight that are important to us, or we want to hear more of, particularly as they deal with Gaelic language, the culture and the community. And also maybe in this particular moment we're here tonight, we might also want to leave behind some stories that maybe don't serve us as well anymore. So that's sort of our purpose for the evening. So right away, for those who know what we do an introduction and then we're going to send you off into your small breakout rooms. And so you will be whisked off shortly into groups of 3, into your breakout rooms. We're asking you to introduce yourself and to answer the questions in the question in the chat. And one thing we really want to say to you is that we really welcome that you speak the language that is comfortable for you. And we welcome Gaelic words, phrases, whatever you want to contribute. And that we want you to share in the safe space here. And we want these stories that you're going to share to lift your spirit and to lift the spirits of our ancestors here tonight. So take your full amount of time, introduce yourself, have a peek, tell your story. Natalie, one of the wonderful people in our group, our team, will announce when it's time for us to wrap up and return back to the main room. And so just want to keep in mind that, tonight our theme is all about our elders. So it's also a time of transition. It's a time when we're saying goodbye to the last of our Nova Scotia Gaelic speakers. And so we want to think about that and feel all the emotion that's attached to that. And also understand that we have guests here tonight that will talk to us about those experiences they've had and who they are moving forward. So there's a question in the chat that you can read when you get in your group. And the question is, who of your ancestors, mentors, or teachers are here with you tonight? And so introduce yourself, take your time, and enjoy the wonderful conversation. See you in a bit. Oh, I hope everyone had a nice little introduction there and got to have some conversations with the crowd that are here tonight. And there is a nice crowd here tonight, so we're welcome to any newcomers that came in. Apparently there were a few that arrived when we were off in our chat, in our breakout rooms. So I want to introduce my guests this evening. I'm so excited to have both of these women here with me. So I have Carmen Macarthur, she's down below, and she can give a little wave there, and Lily Watson. So these are the two guests. And I think what I'll do is just do a quick little intro, and then Lily, are you ready to share a little song with us?
I am. Ready as I'll
Okay.
ever be.
Okay. Well, actually, I'm going to change my mind. Why don't you just drive her on that song first?
Okay, I can do that.
Okay, so maybe you'll just tell us a little bit about who made it,
Yep.
or how it's come to inspire you, and it's now part of your soul.
Well, I'll be honest, I don't know a whole lot about the song. My mother sings it, and I have been learning it. I don't know the whole song as of right now, but I'm currently in the process of learning it. But I am learning it from a recording on Untitled Chapter from, and in the recording is on us Angus Macarthur, and he was from Giants Lake, Guysborough County.
Okay.
And it's quite a piece of verse. It's a pretty heavy poetic song. And it's just kind of in praise of the drink.
Okay.
And yeah, and the different ways that brings joy to people's lives. And it's kind of just a description of
Right. Well, driver.
a good dram. So yeah, I'll do the best I can with it. Again, you might have to bear with me because it is a pretty heavy poetic song, but this is how it goes.
Right.
Nudahuyashin good sawashin mata hanani here stochkai na chodishanam. Ikan and his fortune lay son as a hopen, scarsanach begin jachum, dokshin arkium. Veres to green on shane go feeling. Hora halich and Venus narkaj. Gaskier niat daniel jach willish, bavu atakshinyan, begier gauw. Joch swan shenangashkoch nangel of gasta, the mash maras and be potched and dram. Woche was the salida wacha, nach helma gamerstjes, skapux and elm. Sverken wel nie, javana iris. Sfera ha klienta fenneke hel. Sfera ha mi had ha nulek shani jeda. Sfera ha genius hatred now. That's all I have of it so far.
Lovely. It sounds so pretty. So I'm just overjoyed that you shared that and that you're here. So I'm going to do my intros now of my guests. So that was Lily Watson. So Lily is a student at St. X. She actually hails from Queensville and Little Judic, and she's a student at St. X, and she's studying Celtic studies. She's a Gaelic speaker. She was raised speaking Gaelic. Both her parents speak Gaelic. She step dances beautifully. I've seen that. She plays the fiddle quietly. Not everybody sees or hears that. And we know now she's also a Gaelic singer. And so Lily is one of our new and up and coming elders in our community here in Nova Scotia. And so our second guest is Carmen. And so Carmen Macarthur, she hails from, I never get this right, Karen, but I'm going to go for it, Kiltarity. Kersh?
That's where I'm at now, actually. Well, it's Gillisdale.
Gillisdale, okay.
Originally, but Kiltarity Road.
Kiltarity, okay. And she's a mom and a partner, and she has twin boys. And she speaks Gaelic. She's been learning and speaking Gaelic for many, many years, and she's a teacher to many people online here tonight. She's an educator. She also is a beautiful step dancer. I've seen her dance. She plays the fiddle, and she also sings Gaelic. Oh, you don't? A little bit. I've heard you a teeny bit. Maybe not since a while. Okay. And certainly, Carmen has been walking in the steps of becoming an elder in this community. So I want to welcome you both, and we have a lot to talk about, so I'm going to get right to it. And so I think I'll start with you, Lily. And my first question for you is, who are the Gaelic tradition bearers that impacted you? Take me to a visit to one of their houses.
You cut out a little bit there, Bernadette. Could you just repeat the question?
Yeah, I said, I wanted you to take me to a visit of a Gaelic elder that you have visited with over the years, and anyone that comes to mind.
You keep cutting out, but I think I have the gist of your question. Just take you guys on a visit to a elder Gaelic speaker's house.
That's right. I just said, who? Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. So there's lots of different visits I've been on with different native Gaelic speakers, but probably the most impactful native Gaelic speaker in my language learning journey would be Michael McNeil, or Mickey John H as he's better known, of Jamesville, Melahamish, which is near Iona. And he's just such a lively person. He's very full of life. And going into his house is almost like taking a step back in time. Literally, because his kitchen hasn't really aged since the 1950s. By the looks of it, it's kind of stayed the same for quite a few years. But also just because of the old way Mickey has about him and his values and his the hospitality that he shows everyone that steps into his house is immeasurable. It's really it's just quite something. And going into his house, he's either going to be in the kitchen at the table or he'll be in the living room watching TV. And if he's in the living room watching TV, he's quick as a bunny to jump up and make sure that you're tended to. And he'll take you to the table that is on one of the walls of the kitchen. And it's a very small table, and it makes the visit so much more intimate. And he always will always take his guests there. So you're sitting across from each other and you're very close to each other. And it's just a very intimate experience. And, you know, he'll fix you a drink of rum with Captain Morgan's and ginger ale. That's his signature. He'll get you a chocolate from this jar of chocolates that's probably 6 years old at this point, but they're always ready for guests if you want one. And he just will ask you how. It doesn't matter who you are. Honestly, most of the time that I go, just because he's getting on in age, I always have to reintroduce myself, but he's always so happy to see me, even if he doesn't recognize me right off the bat.
And Lily, what language do you speak when you're with him?
We mainly keep in Gaelic, but like with any native Gaelic speaker, they always want to make sure that you're understanding them and that you're comfortable. So sometimes we'll switch to English if he's feeling that I'm not following, but I'm pretty persistent in keeping in Gaelic with him because I feel very comfortable speaking to Mickey in Gaelic. I feel like there's no judgment there, which makes visiting with him that much more enjoyable because I really, really feel like he's not watching to see what mistakes I'm making, or that doesn't register for him. He's just happy to be speaking, happy to have someone to speak in Gaelic with. So it makes it so much easier.
And just very quickly, because I want to hear so much, but I wanted to know, so what would you talk about? What kind of things would you talk about?
Well, I'm always very interested in just kind of his general life story, because no matter how many times you hear it, there's always something new to learn. He'll just always have another little story to throw in that you haven't heard before, even when you think you've heard it all. He'll always surprise you in some way. So I like just learning about his upbringing, and he likes talking about his grandmothers, so Grandma Hias and Grandma Suas. one grandmother on top of the hill, one grandmother on the bottom of the hill, and just the differences between those grandmothers. One was kind of rough and strict and always had a job for them to do when they would come to the house, and the other one was a little bit more lovey and would give them a treat. And so he'll tell stories about them. And we'll just talk about, general Shenachas, or we'll talk about people in the community. I lived in that community for a couple of years with my brother Colin, so we know the same people, and we'll just talk about, how they're doing, how are the neighbors getting on, because he cares about that. He cares about how the people around him are faring, and he wants to talk about it.
Nice. So I want to keep going and asking you more questions. So I'm going to ask you, so take me to a moment early in your Gaelic learning journey where you were listening or speaking Gaelic, and you were with a Gaelic speaker or with an elder and thought, I want more of this. Was there a moment like that?
Yeah, there's quite a few. But one moment in particular, which is actually a number of different moments, but and it's not so recent, or it's not so early in my learning journey, just because I've kind of gotten close with Mickey in the last number of years, but I've gone on many visits with my brother Colin, and we'll just sit around his little table and we'll just in hand break out into song, and Mickey will sing Erfada Yo, and that's a real crowd pleaser. Like he really lets her rip with that one. And his repertoire isn't super big. That's pretty well the only song that he sings. There's a couple others, but it never gets old, just because of the heart that he puts into the song when he's singing it. You can really feel that. So a moment in my learning journey that I wanted more of would be me, Colin, and Mickey sitting around his kitchen table, hand in hand, singing that song like it was our last day on earth. Because it's so special. It's a moment I could pause and stay in forever and be very content. And yeah.
Okay. So I guess I want to go even deeper with you and ask you this question, that what would your life be like if you didn't learn Gaelic, or you didn't connect with Gaelic tradition bearers? What would that be like?
Well, I think I would be much more lost in regards to my purpose on this earth, and I would have much less of an understanding of why I'm here, or why I exist, or just generally what my purpose is, because I would be lacking in community for sure. And I think that, I wouldn't have as good critical thinking skills. I think I would be more ignorant to other people's languages and cultures, because I couldn't make those same comparisons and parallels between what my own ancestors have gone through and what I've experienced. So I definitely would be much more ignorant, and that would be a big loss. But I think as well, kind of on the other side of that, I probably wouldn't, I think some aspects of my life would actually be a little bit easier, because I wouldn't be as aware of the immense amount that we've lost, and I wouldn't be carrying that grief as heavily as I do now. And so because of that, that unawareness, I think in some aspects of my life, I would be going about things a bit easier. But I wouldn't trade not having that grief for the world, because it also makes me who I am. And it also adds another dimension to my life that I wouldn't have if I wasn't aware of who I am as a Gael, and what my ancestors have gone through, and the trauma that they've experienced, and the trauma that my grandparents have experienced through language cultural identity loss. So yeah, I wouldn't be aware of that or carrying that. But I also wouldn't necessarily be better off for it.
You're touching on some big pieces tonight, Lily. Thank you. I don't have words, but I appreciate so much what you're saying. If there was a whisper in your ears about speaking Gaelic, Lily, when does that whisper show up? And what might it tell us?
I think that Gaelic whisper would show up in my ear when I'm kind of feeling a little bit down, or like revitalizing Gaelic language and culture to the degree that it used to be, which is probably not quite realistic. But when all of that feels so far-fetched, and it just feels like people aren't really caring in the way that I want them to be, I think that that little Gaelic whisper would just come and it would say, Cumbrad, Cumbrad, Stiacha, Stiacha, like keep on, it's worth it. And it's enough what I'm doing, like the space that I'm holding in this community. Even if sometimes it really feels like I'm not doing enough, or my Gaelic isn't good enough, despite the circumstances I come from, and I'm feeling a lot of pressure from that. I think that that little Gaelic whisper would just be there to reassure me and say, you know, just the fact that you're pursuing this at all, and that you want to learn this language in any capacity, and share in this culture and language with other people, that is enough. Hashin Galewaj, like.
Hashin Galewaj, good
Yeah.
Jada. So, so I also was wondering, when does it feel really hard to identify and speak Gaelic?
One situation that really sticks out to me, where I probably feel the most unstableness or insecurity in identifying as a Gael and speaking Gaelic, would be when I'm telling people that don't really know me, just my peers at university, that I'm doing a Celtic Studies degree. I feel a lot of shame when I tell people that, and I just expect judgment from them. And whether or not that's in my head, which it very well could be, I think that still goes to show that the stigma and the shame that's attached to speaking this language and culture. So that's definitely a time when I find it very hard to identify as a Gael and be really proud of who I am, because I feel very defensive, and I feel a guard. I've put a guard up when I tell people that I'm taking Celtic Studies. Just, of course, not my friends or people that I know, but just strangers that I might be meeting, you know, at Piper's Pub or something. Like, it just, it feels hard to say that, because there's so few of us in the program too, and it's not very well known, and people don't really know what you're going to do with that, or what kind of job you're going to pursue, and it's yeah. So that's when I feel a little bit shaky and my Gaelic identity.
So I'm could ask many more questions, but I have one more for you. If you could imagine yourself as a mature Gaelic tradition bearer, like years ahead, okay, and you have a feeling of enough, can you describe what that would be like, and what beauty would be inside of you and around you?
Well, I think when I picture myself as a older Gaelic tradition bearer, and even that title feels like I haven't earned it by any means. So hopefully in the future, I will feel like I actually earned that title, number one. And I also would just hope that I'm living, you know, rurally on the island, with a strong network of people around me who share the same core values. I would like to be, you know, as self-sufficient as I can possibly be, and have my own garden, and maybe a communal garden I could share with neighbors. And I would just hope that people would feel really comfortable coming to me if they wanted to learn something from me. And I would also hope to be able to learn something from them as well. So we could both reassure each other in our Gaelic identities. And because I think, you know, to go back to that moment when me, Mickey, and Colin are sitting there singing that song, I think part of the reason that Mickey is so happy and it's so heartfelt when he sings that song is because he's with people that actually are enjoying it with him. And I'm sure there was many points in his life where he wouldn't feel like he could sing that song and people would actually appreciate it. So I hope when I'm also an older Gaelic speaker, I can have people come into my kitchen and I could sing a song with them and they would enjoy it to the same extent that I enjoy Mickey's singing. And that would give me the reassurance that I need as a Gael, and hopefully give them that reassurance and validation as well, that, you know, their language and their culture and wanting to learn it and pursue it is valid, and it's really important. And it makes them who we are. It makes us who we are. So yeah, that's what I would hope.
Oh, Lily, those are beautiful thoughts and hopes and dreams there. And could I just say this, Lily is a neighbor, but also when she talks about being reluctant to think of herself as an elder, last spring when I was doing planting, Lily came by every day for 3 hours more if she wanted to, and she would speak Gaelic to me the whole time. And I would show her about gardening, and I would then try to speak Gaelic back to her in my very beginner stage of Gaelic. And so I think you're well on your way in walking.
Thank you, Bernadette.
Thank you.
But that was definitely a trade-off. I learned just as much from you as you might have learned from me.
Well, thanks so much, Lily. So I know that people are going to want to be chatting in the next breakout room about things that you've said, but we're not done yet. We have another guest here tonight. Carmen, I'm going to ask you similar questions, but I think you should tell people what you were doing 5 minutes before you popped online.
So around 3 o'clock this afternoon, we noticed that one of our cows was going into labor. And after supper, my husband went out to check on her, and he came in saying, "You have to come out and help me pull this calf out." So we pulled a huge calf out of one of our cows we had to use a rope because we just couldn't get it out. And I got inside from doing that about 5 minutes before I came online with everyone. So the timing worked out, but it was a little touch and go.
I'm happy to hear that. And just in case anyone's wondering, it was a little bull. So that's awesome. Oh, thanks for sharing that. That's lovely.
Yeah, actually a very big bull. That's why she needed so much help.
Okay. So Carmen, thank you for showing up and making it a priority, and for your cow to cooperate with us, and
Yes.
and Ryan. So I'm assuming your babies are sleeping. So my first question for you is, who are the Gaelic tradition bearers that impacted you, and can you take me to a visit to their house?
There have been so many, but the ones that I've been closest to are Mary and Vincent McKinnon, who were neighbors of mine. They both passed away actually pretty recently. Vincent was 2 years ago, and Mary, it will be a year on the 16th of February. But for the past 10 years, and just until she passed away, I would go there to visit at least once a week, maybe several times a week. And the visit really depended on what time of day and also the time of year. But typically, if I went in there to their house, really almost any day, maybe not Sunday, but any other day in the morning, usually Mary was baking. She was a big baker. So you'd kind of walk right almost into the kitchen, a very small porch. And, there was never any need to knock. They just expected anyone to waltz right in. And the first thing you would see would be Mary standing at the counter with an apron and a hairnet. She was very professional about her baking. And there would be baking cooling on every single surface in this kitchen. I mean, it was amazing. Say it was biscuits, it was biscuit day. There was biscuits absolutely everywhere. And then maybe still a batch being prepared to go in the oven. So if she was busy baking, I didn't want to interrupt what she was doing, but I still wanted to have the visit. So they had this little stool just right in the corner, kind of by the counter, and I'd usually perch there on the stool and chat with her. While she was baking. Of course, we'd be chatting in Gaelic. And even though she was very busy, there was no hesitation about you coming in for a visit. She was still so happy to see you. And because her eyesight was failing, she'd often have some help with her baking. So her husband Vincent would be there just kind of keeping an eye on things. And one of the memories I have is she'd ask him to look at the biscuits and she'd say to him, "Avel at ruag? Are they brown?" Or it's kind of a Gaelic color that's like a reddish brown. And then he'd give her the okay that it was time for them to come out of the oven. So after a little bit of time on the stool, we'd move to the kitchen table, which was just, right there. And then we'd have tea and fresh biscuits out of the oven, the best tasting thing ever, with lots of butter. And she would make sure that I ate at least 4. And I love those. I have to say, I think I gained about 10 pounds when I first moved here, just eating all of her baking. But of course, I loved eating the biscuits, but she got as much joy out of watching you eating her baking as you did out of eating it. She was just loving sitting there watching you eat and enjoy her food.
Carmen, can I ask you a question? I think you mentioned this to me, but wasn't there something she would say to you in Gaelic when you come in as she was baking?
Oh yes, she'd usually say, "Hami savatala lud and Jew. I'm in the flour barrel today."
I love that.
Yeah. So she'd have like a biscuit day, there'd be a fat Archie day. There would be, she made these date cookies. And I asked her once, when you bake, say, biscuits, how many do you make? And she said, about 3 batches. And I said, well, how many's in a batch? About 100.
Oh,
So she was making like 300 biscuits or cookies like on any given morning.
And she gave away a ton of that food.
She gave away most of it. She had a freezer in her basement that was just for her baking. And they had tons of company, well, a big family as well, but tons of company just from the community, Gaelic learners, really anyone. And she sent every single person home with a bag of her baking. And I have to say, she passed away almost a year ago, and we're just getting to the bottom of her baking now. We're still eating it.
Oh my. And Carmen, when you were there with her, did you speak Gaelic all the time?
Yes, yeah. Actually, she was very fluid about going back and forth between Gaelic and English, but she did pretty much always speak Gaelic to me. And if she forgot and turned to English, if Vincent happened to be there, he would kind of like chastise her. He would remind her to speak Gaelic to me.
That's so interesting. And did he not say something to you when you'd be coming in, like he'd say something to you in Gaelic about?
So he would very often be outside. He liked to work outside a lot. So he might be shoveling snow or cutting grass, and so he'd greet you very warmly outside, and then he'd usually say, "Kumorsh to stay, Hamedi stay. You keep on in, Mary's in."
Wow.
So
nice.
then you'd continue your visit with her, and then he might be in and out.
Wow, Wow, Carmen, that's just, I can imagine being there. Like you're just describing it so warmly. So of course you've been learning Gaelic, you've been on this Gaelic learning journey for a lot of years. And so, and working and speaking with Gaelic elders, was there a moment that you had ever where you thought, I want more of this?
So fairly early on in my journey, I participated in Bundesbad, a Gaelic mentorship program with Lily's dad, Seamus Watson. And I really feel like that he opened up the Gaelic doors for me. And that's when I really started to understand not just the language, but what it is like to be a Gaelan in a Gaelic environment. Um, and he took us to visit a lot of people, but one of my most memorable experiences was going with Seamus, Shannon McMullen, and Mary Jane Lemond to visit Peter Jack McLean, who passed away a few years ago at, I think he was 99, but he was definitely up in years at the time. And we had such a wonderful visit with him. We sang Gaelic songs, like all of us. He was telling stories in Gaelic. He played the fiddle, sang Portuguese connected to the fiddle. And I think we might have had a little bit of a Gilek too. And it was such a beautiful experience. I just remember being completely entranced by what was going on. And so much so that it actually it was late in the afternoon in the winter, and it started to get dark, and no one even thought to turn on a light right away because we were just so in the moment with what was happening. It felt like it could have been 2012 or 1912.
Oh, wow. So that's so like you're just taking us in that moment. And so it just wrapped you around like a quilt. So I wanted to ask you some other questions, like what would your life be like as well if you didn't learn Gaelic or you didn't connect with these tradition bearers that you mentioned? Like you've had a lot to reflect on in the time that you've been, living in this area and learning Gaelic. So can you sort of talk about that a little bit?
I can't even imagine what that would have been like, say, if my life had taken a different turn and it didn't lead me to Cape Breton Island. It's unimaginable because it's really the elder Gaelic speakers have kind of led my journey in a way that they are why I wanted to learn Gaelic. It wasn't so much about the language as being with them. So, and that's really the main reason that I moved where I live now, was the opportunity. I had already met Mary and Vincent and been to them to visit them a few times, but didn't know them really, really well. And I needed a place to live, and I couldn't find anywhere to rent. And this house came on the market that basically is right next door. And I felt like this is a once in a lifetime chance to live right next to not one, but two native Gaelic speakers and learn from them.
And you need to point out as well that you have a full-time active farm that, you want to describe all the animals you have in this space that you're in, this Gaelic space?
Yeah, so that kind of came along in time as well. So now we have cows, a horse, chickens and ducks and big gardens. And when Lily talked about being self-sufficient, that's kind of one of our goals that we're still working on and that I've been working on for many years. And it really paired very well with learning Gaelic and learning from tradition bearers, because that's one of the things we got to talk about. I often came in with questions about the growing potatoes or about raising animals, and that's how they grew up, and they did all those things even while when they were elderly. They didn't have animals, but they still grew a garden. And
Mhm.
I'm just thinking about one particular time I was trying to learn all of the language for the things that I was doing. So there was a spell of time that I was milking a cow. So I'd come in with questions about the language for that. So I went in one day and I was asking questions about, this might be a little off color for everyone, but it was about breeding cows.
Mhm.
And when the animal is in heat, and anyway, they thought that was hilarious. They laughed and laughed and laughed that I was asking questions about that, how to breed animals and all the language around that. And
Did
they
they have
said
good
they said
advice?
to me shin brinam firanach, that's man's talk, but they
Yeah.
still told me.
Oh, very good. Well, obviously you know what you're doing. You have a calf tonight.
Well, just
They
stumbling
taught
along with
they
lots of
taught
help
you
from the
well in
community.
conjunction with nature. So thank you, Carmen. So Carmen, I'm just wondering, because you have mentioned both Mary and Vincent having passed away this past year and a bit, and with Mary's anniversary coming up, I know that you've written some pieces, some poems. I don't know if that would be something you'd want to share tonight.
Sure. I'm going to try without crying.
Okay.
This is one of the reasons I wanted to be here and do this, was because I felt so much grief about their loss and almost like a hard time moving forward with my Gaelic life, because they were such a big part of it. So I felt like, sharing some of those emotions, and also what I learned from them, was a part of kind of moving forward and continuing their legacy. But shortly after Mary passed away, I was just trying to write whatever would come to mind to get some of those emotions out there. So this is kind of what came up.
Okay.
When I first darkened your door, we traveled back in time. I met people more real than flesh and bone. Shani Vichel, Dal Wawistervod, Ian Anash Erachet. Their names, like magical incantations, I asked you to repeat them again and again. Your people dotted the hillsides and filled the glens. They cut hay with horse-drawn mowers, winnowed oats in the wind, planted and butchered by the moon. I saw planting frolics, wood frolics, and millings. No one worked alone. I saw Sunday visits and evening prayers, fished the rivers and filled barrels with Gaspereau and salt. We traveled the storied landscape together, where each hill and stream had a name. An Gwaelsk, an Badan Môr, an Topurgarat. Walked barefoot to Egypt, bringing cattle to summer grazing. Listened to Hussey regale children in Gaelic with ancient hero tales. This was your world, and it became mine too, one I could visit from time to time at least. When Vincent left, your world became cloudy and vague. The hills grew quiet, and so did you. I could see you becoming lonesome for your people. But without you, where are they now? Averi Nian, Awastudvik, Awastudoik. Are the glens still full of characters? Do the hills still have names? Shinakata.
Shinakata. Shinakata. Oh. That's, I don't know. It to me, it just describes how they shared so much with you, and that you could personify that. And so I just thank you for sharing that. I have one more question for you, Carmen, and I would love to have an hour with the two of you. In addition, but I'm just, as we talk about the elders and how important they have been for both of you in your life, and I can speak to that for my life too. And so if you could imagine yourself as this more mature Gaelic elder, like what beauty do you feel you want to bring into the world, or as we move forward as an elder? What do you think you could offer?
I really, a lot of what Lily said also resonates with me, and I really look to Mary as a role model. Just how many people she welcomed, and how she just gave people that feeling of acceptance and that feeling of home. Um, and you know, she lived in her home with Vincent for all her life, not far from where she grew up. So I imagine, I certainly plan to stay here in Gillisdale with my family and on our little farm. And I hope that people, especially young people who want to learn Gaelic, will come and find me and feel comfortable visiting the way that I did with Maddie, and so many other people did with her and Vincent as well. And just that they'll feel that sense of home coming into my kitchen that I did in hers. And if I can give people any little inkling of what that was like, then, you know, my job is done.
Oh,
And
nice.
I always think of how she used to say whenever I would leave and I said, okay, well, you know, I'll be back tomorrow or whenever. And she'd always just said, Bishinik Bala, we'll be at home.
Uh, thank you, Carmen. Thank you, Carmen, and thank you, Lily. You filled my heart tonight and my soul. And I feel blessed to have had the chance to have these conversations with you and to learn about the important people in your life. So I feel grateful, and I'm certain others do as well. So we're going to leave it there. Thank you for sharing. And we're going to prepare ourselves to head back to our breakout rooms. And you have about 6 minutes. You'll be in a group of 3 with 6 minutes each to chat. And I'm going to remind everyone it's okay to listen, to take your time. We had a lot of beautiful stories here tonight. And so it's okay if we don't talk for a little bit when you're kind of pulling your ideas together. This is a gift for us to be together tonight in this Kaylee and to share. And your story that you'll bring into your little group is going to be very important. So introduce yourself, make a little visit, and I hope you meet some beautiful strangers. So the question is in the chat. And so the question is, what stories have you heard from the guests that reminded you of something in your life? Was there a comment, a moment, or even a song or the tunes that we heard earlier that altered your viewpoint this evening? So we want you to share. We're all going to go off into our group, and then we come back and we have what's called a harvest. So thank you, ladies. I am blessed to have you with me tonight. And we'll see you all in the little breakout rooms. All right, I think people are landing back from their visits. I hope they were filled with stories. I'm actually feeling a little bit, I don't know, teary tonight. I don't know why, but when we were in our group, we were talking about such nice things. I had Beverly and Candace in my group, and we were remembering stuff, and we were talking about the poem and Lily's stories, and it was it filled us up. So yeah, where am I? Where am I going tonight? So I want to welcome you all back and hope you had some really rich conversations. And so now it's the part of the evening we call the harvest. So we want you to take a moment and reflect on today's conversations, the stories you heard, the stories you shared, the things you remembered, maybe the tunes or the songs that you heard. And how does this kind of connect with you? What do you want to say about that? And so is there a belief that happened tonight, or an action, or some sort of philosophy that was shared that you'd like to revisit another time and said, I want to know more about that, or I want to bring that into my life? And is there something that inspired you that you might want to do something different for the future? So get busy. We love having you write in the chat. Frances collects all of this juicy material and she puts it in a nice summary that you can visit after the session's over and share with a friend or a family member. And so please pop in the chat. I'm going to be quiet. We're just going to have quiet time. You're going to think and you're going to write. So off you go. Just open the chat at the bottom and just take your time and write. Okay. Elders. I love that the upcoming elders speak of their elders. I find this to be a recurring theme. When Lily talked about the heavy grief she feels when she realized how much has moved on me, how much has been lost, that really hit me. Tapa leave, Carmen, agus Lily, agus Tangutsa, Kuchaha, Bernadette. You're welcome. I feel like packing the car this summer and becoming a sort of, oh, I lost you there. Where is that one? Okay. I feel like packing the car this summer, becoming a sort of door-to-door salesperson, with the exception that I'll be knocking on the doors of Gaels. Mass, no doubt. That's wonderful. I would like to hear more stories from the older Gaelic people who are still around. The session was very good and whetted my appetite to hear more. It would be good to hear about these experiences and challenges, past and present. The dead aren't gone from us. They're with us and in our stories and in our memories, in the love and the kindness that they shared with us, and we can share with others. They aren't gone, only changed. Love that. How do we cultivate spontaneous visits with our friends and neighbors? How do we be at home for them to feel like it's okay to stop by? Nice. I hope Bria avi agestach re Lilies es Carmen. Stories of Mary and Vince were so lovely. I lived near where Carmen settled in Kiltarity. Her stories reminded me so much of the kind and kind hospitality I enjoyed when I lived there. I'm going to keep going so I catch a few more. It was great to talk with Mike in Nova Scotia and Sylvia in Vancouver. Hi ma e homa avi a feichen dunya oga agus ia trang a goper balchen feren agus one Gaelic. Okay, I might have botched that up, but I give it a go. We learned about the importance of connection, whether that connection is between neighbors, over a cup of tea, between strangers across the country. The sorrow about everything that is lost, sharing food and drink at the same time. That's what resonated with this person. Both Lily and Carmen reinforced for me my very strong belief in the importance of visiting. I was brought up in the habit and custom in Cape Breton. We'll try to incorporate that in the weekly routines. That's just wonderful. Just keep them coming. Gaelic songs were, whoops, move really fast. Go back there. Gaelic songs were what first attracted me to the language. And there's a whole lot there from Casey, so I want to read more. It's very challenging to see the beautiful older Gaels leave us in Nova Scotia, but they have left a great gift. They offer us a way of living well, and I can see Lily and Carmen stepping into the shoes as the speakers and tradition bearers. They're also role models for us. Incredible. Whoop. Carmen's stories motivated me more to keep up with the Gaelic. Both last and this week, the commitment of young people's bodies bodes well, for the future. Just keep them coming. That's wonderful. I'm conscious of the time, so I have to kind of move, keep going with our ending. We're coming to the end of the Gaelic, and so I'm going to ask Natasha or Susan to spotlight Frances, and we're going to just chat about what's up for next week. Oh, you're muted there, Frances.
Yeah, I'm gone now. Hello, everyone. Thanks, Bernadette. Wow, that was so lovely. And I'm here next week to host, and I'm so honored and very excited to be welcoming some folks from the Mi'kmaq community here in Nova Scotia, here in Unamagi in Cape Breton. So we're going to speak with Rosie Syllaboy and John, also known as Tiny Cremo from Waikoma, and Kenny Prosper from Eskasoni. And you might know Kenny's father was Wilfred Prosper, who was a fiddler in Cape Breton, and also a very respected traditional elder in the Mi'kmaq community. So we're going to carry on this theme of Geleod, talk to them about what that means in their culture, and also about language revitalization and elders and all the kinds of topics we've been talking on so far to listen and learn what it's about those things from their culture. So hope you can join us and bring some friends.
Oh, that sounds good, Frances. I'm looking forward to it, and I certainly feel filled up, and I've had galore this evening. So thanks, Frances. We'll see you next week. And so we're just asking everyone to be sure and join us next Friday, same time, same place, and register and be part of this group, because we really want to hear your voices, and we want you to feel welcome and just connect with each other. This has been a long 2 years, and reading the news can be very tough. So this is kind of a safe place to hang out together. So be sure to register at Eventbrite. Also tonight, I have to make sure that I say my thank yous. So I want to thank Carmen Macarthur and Lily Watson. And one thing I didn't notice, or I noticed but I didn't say, is that when they were talking about being in the kitchens with their elders, their face and their smiles were so large and so beautiful. And I just think that sort of sums it up. So I say thank you for that, for the rich stories and for your beautiful hearts. We couldn't do this evening without thanking Natasha and Susan. They are with How We Thrive and with Erheli, and they make this so seamless and make this work for us, this evening that we get to spend together. So thank you, both of you ladies. And also we could not have tonight without the support from the Office of Gaelic Affairs. Both Lewis and Frances have been committed to this project. Frances puts in a fair amount of time from her work life to make sure that behind the scenes she keeps us all organized. And so we are funded from OGA, and we are grateful to them. And so that's us coming to the end of our evening. But before we go, I believe we have one more song to sing us home and into our babas, as we would say growing up, our leppies. And so Carmen has agreed to sing a song with us tonight, and she'll tell us a little bit about the song, and I think it's from the Margrees, and how she came to it be part of her life. So, Carmen, suicide.
I just want to say also that I really enjoyed this evening, and I've been wanting to participate in these sessions for a long time, but bedtime is usually an all hands on deck situation. But I'm really glad I got to be with you tonight. I miss people so much, and so I'm hoping to get to some more. But so I do have I have a little bit of a cold, but I'm going to try a few verses of which is a song that I learned from the singing of Ben Handy Hamish. I think her name in English is Margaret Gillis, the wife of Sandy James. And I came across this recording. Actually, I think Mary Jane found it among the recordings done by Helen Creighton and sent it to me. And I was like, wow, just an amazing version. I actually had heard the same song, a different version, sung by singers from the North Shore. And the singer that I learned it from was from Gillisdale. And she was a weaver and a midwife and held millings in her home. Actually, Mary remembered going to one when she was just a child with her mother. And by all accounts, just an incredible woman. Her husband died when he was in his 40s, and she raised her large family while delivering babies as well. But anyway, I could go on about her, but I'll try a little bit of the song and just a few verses. It's a milling song. Iu haro hari kin hin mokranya gaun you haro hari haro. Kemaragetas mi visun da gages cool na kranyakrum hiu haro hari haro harekin hima kranyagaun you haro hari haro sauna hori yamaka hilekes krivna doyakan hiu haro hari haro harekin hima kranyagaun you haro hari haro is get the hoine kroklam hinger gown chili tolidum hiu haro hari haro harekin hima kranyagaun you haro hari haro is mashe tachkrag valgiari yo hil nasurin chin hiu haro hari haro harekin hin mokranyagaun you haro hari haro dusan gana hayan rua misra kuka kranyagach hiu haro hari haro harekin hin mokranyagaun you haro hari haro. Sinagata.
Hinuhain, Carmen, Tapalet Gumor, Tapalet Lily. So we're just going to say goodnight to everyone. Aikabala, hang your son at Chian.
Aikabala, Vahudanya, Bahoma, Vian Corderleaf, Tapalet, your son a Hara Machino, Ashel, I guess.
Alilak, Benachleaf.
Okay, Aikabala, Captain the Maya Harav.
Aikabala.
Tapalavula.
Tapalet, your son at Chian.
Gyfal tapl gymwr, Sianerach gael.
Am I go iach yn I an y fat arches.
Morning. Unrhyw awas,
Had the